On the night of October the 31st, 1517, a priest in Wittenberg, a small town in what's now Germany, walked up quickly to the church in the center of town. He stopped in front of the closed door and looked around for a moment. But instead of opening it and letting himself in, he took out a printed document, a hammer, and some nails. Carefully and gently, he hammered the nails one by one into the document and the wooden door. When he was done, he looked at the document for a second. Then he turned around and disappeared into the dark as quickly as he had come. The next morning, the small town woke up to find itself in a state of agitation. People were gathering in front of the church. Everyone was eager to have a look at the document. On it were written what came to be known as the 95 Theses, arguments, provocations, comments, and criticism against the Catholic Church, written by the priest himself. And his name was Martin Luther. Who was Martin Luther? What were the 95 Theses all about? What is so special about him? Hello, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another video. If you are new to this channel, my name is Frank Zhu, and I'm a college professor teaching sociology, history, and philosophy. I'm also an award-winning landscape photographer. Today's video is another episode of what I now consider a series of videos about great thinkers. Previously, I talked about Socrates, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Voltaire, and the Buddha, and many others. Please check them out on my channel if you are interested. Today, I want to talk about a thinker who stood out because of his courage to challenge authorities by making his thoughts known publicly. The 95 Theses turned out to be a fuse that ignited an explosion in the Christian world, embarking on a religious revolution that would soon spread throughout Germany and Western Europe, a revolution that changed Christianity forever. You may not know much about Martin Luther, but don't be surprised if I tell you that you may have a lot in common with him. If you believe that we all should have the courage to stand firm for what we think is right, if you think that your own thoughts are as important as those of everybody else around you, if you think that freedom of thinking is most valuable in your life, you share a lot with Martin Luther. Martin Luther was born in 1483. As a child, he went to a local school, learned Latin, studied liberal arts, and in 1501, he enrolled at a very distinguished university. Although his father wanted him to become a lawyer, he soon gave up law and switched to studying theology because he wanted to become a monk. The reason for becoming a monk, according to himself, was to keep a promise. He had once been caught in a fierce thunderstorm. He was so frightened that he began to pray for help. He promised God that he would become a monk if he survived the thunderstorm. Indeed, he survived, and as he had promised, he became a monk at a local monastery. He was soon ordained a priest and continued his studies of theology at the University of Wittenberg. After receiving his doctorate, he became a professor of moral theology. It was his experience as a monk and his theological studies that led him to question the practices and doctrines of the Catholic Church, which, in his eyes, had become corrupt enough to be criticized in public. His main point of criticism in the 95 Theses was the selling of indulgences. By the way, according to Catholic teaching, an indulgence was a kind of pass given by the church authority for an individual to reduce the amount of punishment which the individual has to undergo for his or her sins. In the view of Martin Luther, indulgences should never be sold. The sending of indulgences by some church people to collect money for themselves was clearly a sign of corruption. Besides, he was also disillusioned after his visit to Rome, where he witnessed what he perceived as the incompetence and immorality of the clergy. Not only did he expose the corruption of selling indulgences in the 95 Theses, but Luther also argued that humans could only go to heaven through faith in God, not by doing good deeds. Luther did not only post his 95 Theses on the door of the church. Thanks to the new technology of printing, he printed many copies and distributed them as widely as he could. The new technology of printing was like a social media nowadays, enabling him to share his thoughts with an audience bigger than ever before. And he did it all by himself, in the same way as a social media influencer does nowadays. Martin Luther was also a fantastic writer, passionate, articulate, and capable of making every reader understand his points of view in simple language. He was also like a modern-day social media user because in his writings he loved to use the word "you" to address his reader. He soon gathered huge groups of fans, not only in his hometown but also across Germany and Western Europe. There is no doubt that Luther's thinking was revolutionary. However, what I am most impressed were not his ideas, but his extraordinary courage. It's easy to do thinking to yourself, but it takes courage and a willingness to sacrifice yourself to make your thoughts known publicly, knowing that authorities will come to get you. By posting his 95 Theses on the door of the church, Martin Luther was openly and publicly challenging the authority of the Catholic Church, an act which he knew would potentially put his life in danger. But he was a man of extraordinary courage. He had the courage to develop his ideas to a point where he was willing to defend it, even though he knew that the position he was taking would be considered heretical and that he might lose his life. For me, his courage to put him in the same rank as many other great thinkers, such as Copernicus and Charles Darwin. As I said at the beginning, Luther's 95 Theses marked the beginning of a revolution, which we call Protestant Reformation nowadays. It was called Protestant because it was a protest movement against the Roman Catholic Church. It was a Reformation because it brought about many fundamental changes to Christianity. A new branch to Christianity called Protestantism was established, in addition to the existent Eastern Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church. I will probably make a separate video talking about how Christianity was split into the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. Please let me know if you are interested. The cornerstone of the newly emerged Protestantism was laid by Martin Luther. As an independent thinker, Luther hated any kind of religious or secular authority. In the eyes of Luther, the authority of the Bible was the ultimate source of religious truth. Every Christian could communicate with God as long as they had faith in Him and read the Bible. There was no need for the church in the middle. Every Christian was a priest, and they could interpret the Bible in their own ways, free from the authority of the Pope and the church hierarchy. It is hard to over-exaggerate the significance of the Protestant Reformation in European history. The Reformation paved the way to the development of individualism, which emphasized personal autonomy and individual achievements. Individualism eventually gave rise to the Age of Enlightenment, represented by those great thinkers such as John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Voltaire. For more information about them, please check out my videos on this channel. Martin Luther's open challenges led to a confrontation with the Church. In 1521, he was summoned to an assembly of the Church, where he was ordered to recant his views. But Luther refused. In the same year, Pope Leo X excommunicated him. The Holy Roman Emperor, who was the highest religious and secular authority, declared him an outlaw and ordered his arrest. However, Luther was saved by a member of the Holy Roman Empire who offered protection. But Luther had to remain in hiding for a long time before he could return to a normal life. By the way, it was during his hiding time that Luther translated the Bible from Latin and Greek into German, which has since been considered a monumental achievement in the German language. Luther died in 1546. Well, I think that is all for today. But before I go, I'd like to touch one more note. Don't confuse Martin Luther with Martin Luther King Jr. The latter was a prominent leader in the American Civil Rights Movement in the 1950s and 1960s. When his father traveled to Germany in the 1930s, he was so inspired by Luther's writings that he decided to change both his own and his son's names in honor of the Protestant Reformation leader. Hence, Martin Luther King Sr. and Martin Luther King Jr. As always, thank you for watching this video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.